Good morning. Welcome to this liberal religious congregation, Bay Area Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Steve Jordan, and I am today's worship associate. Rented lips this morning. We're happy to have Catherine Vance with us as our guest speaker this morning. Kathy is a member of BAUUC, who's a trained interfaith chaplain, a writer, and an aspirant to UU ministry attending Iliff School of Theology in Denver. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this place, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces we might be ashamed of. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this week and might have forgotten how to trust and open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised. We welcome you among us. Our first hymn this morning is Immortal Love, verses 1, 2, and 4. And for those of you that like to read music, you can open up your hymnal, and it's number 10. Otherwise, you can follow along. Bob Tomlinson is going to light our chalice this morning. We come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, how we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. Thank you, Bob. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they're getting at. I know that they aren't getting it quite right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they want to have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names or no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see in me goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and my foibles, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and who want to hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being in the world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant be honest, engaged, and kind, who strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises I make. I want to be with people who give of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and gifts. I want to be with people who know that human community is often warm and generous, sometimes challenging, and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people like you. Now please join me in saying our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with one another. Our first reading this morning is from Nobody Cries When We Die by Patrick Reyes, who's a board member at Meadville Lombard School of Theology. When I started my theological studies, the professor asked, "What prepared you for this experience?" The purpose of the question was to illustrate our collective wisdom and skills that we had developed over the years so they could be capitalized on during our studies. Many classmates responded by offering their education and impressive resumes. They told of their travels or their work with poor people or urban black or brown youth. They talked about having liberated themselves and others from the shackles of global poverty and colonialism. All of it was beautiful work, but some of their answers still intimidate me today. I'm sure it all made a difference to someone, or at least broadened their own vision of the world I myself had inherited. When the professor got to me, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "I survived to adulthood." Yeah, I remember the class laughing. My face turned red, and even now recalling the event, because the sentiment came from the very heart or gut of my experience. Why was I here? That is how I heard the question. I was not here because I had some great experience in communities of colors helping the poor. I was that community. Or because I studied at some great university. I had not. But because I knew how to survive. At their laughing, I defaulted to how I would respond back home. Puffed out my chest, pulled down my baseball cap, and hid behind a veil of anger and rage. The professor asked me to give a real answer. Give a real answer? Apparently, survival did not translate. The struggle isn't real for everyone. La lucha, the struggle, was something other students and the teacher had read about in books. But they never knew anyone personally who had survived and struggled. We were all supposed to learn about such suffering together. God forbid that it might actually be among us.
think I'll sit up here. So if you'd like a front row seat, whether you're young or young at heart, you're welcome to come up, sit up a little closer. Today we're reading Be Kind by Pat Zietlow Miller, illustrated by Jen Hill. Tanisha spilled grape juice yesterday. All over her new dress. Everyone laughed. I almost did too, but Mom always tells me to be kind, so I tried. I don't think it worked. I said, purple is my favorite color. I thought Tanisha would smile, but she ran into the hall instead. When she came back, snack time was over. She put on her art smock and didn't look at anyone. I almost told Tanisha that art was my favorite class, but I didn't want her to leave again. So I painted purple splotches and added some green until I had a bunch of beautiful violets. While I painted, I thought about Tanisha. Should I have handed her my napkin? Let her borrow my sweatshirt? Spill my juice so everyone stared at me instead? What does it mean to be kind anyway? Maybe it's giving, making cookies for Mr. Rinaldi, who lives alone. Letting someone with smaller feet have my too tight shoes. He might win races in them too. Maybe it's helping, putting dirty dishes in the sink. Cleaning up after Otis, our class guinea pig. He's a messy eater. Maybe it's paying attention, telling Desmond I like his new blue boots. Asking the new girl to be my partner. Listening to Auntie Franny's stories, even the ones I've heard before. Being kind should be easy, like throwing away a wrapper or recycling a bottle, or saying, thank you, bless you. My mom says the quickest way to be kind to people, or to be kind, is to use people's names. Hey, Kayla, what's new, Omar? Good afternoon, Rabbi Mandelbaum. Being kind can be hard, too, even when you know what to do. Teaching someone something I'm good at is tricky, even when I'm patient. And sticking up for someone when other kids aren't kind is really hard and really scary. Maybe I can't solve Tanisha's grape juice problem. Maybe all I can do is sit by her in art class and paint this picture for her, because I know she likes purple too. Maybe I can only do small things, but my small things might join small things other people do. And together, they could grow into something big. So he found her yarn. She's teaching her how to knit, and she gives something to the girl in her class. Something really big, so big that all of our kindnesses spill out of our school, spread throughout town, travel across the country, and go all the way around the world. Right back to Tanisha and me, so we can be kind again and again. And you can see she's still up here. And again. The end.
Our keeper of the flame this morning is Ada. Please join me in saying, we pass this flame of religious freedom from generation to generation.
morning. Our second reading is from Parker Palmer, and if you have never heard that name, he's a Quaker and formed the organization, the Center for Courage and Renewal, which teaches people how to sit in conversation with one another. Like a wild animal, the soul is tough, resilient, resourceful, savvy, and self-sufficient. It knows how to survive in hard places. Yet despite its toughness, the soul is also shy. Just like a wild animal, it seeks safety in the dense underbrush, especially when other people are around. If we want to see a wild animal, we know the last thing we need to do is go crashing through the woods, yelling for it to come out. But if we will walk quietly into the woods, sit patiently at the base of a tree and breathe with the earth, fade into the surroundings, the wild creature that we seek might put in an appearance. We may see it only briefly and only out of the corner of an eye. Sometimes community often means a group of people who go crashing through the woods together, scaring the soul away. In spaces ranging from congregations to classrooms, and also in community with ourselves, we behave in ways that drive everything into hiding. A circle of trust knows how to sit quietly in the woods and wait for the shy soul to show up. The relationships in such a group are not pushy, but patient. They're not confrontational, but compassionate. They're not filled with expectations and demands, but with an abiding faith in the reality of the inner teacher and in each person's capacity to learn from it. So the topic today is the weight of the world becoming or being a trauma-aware congregation. And I'd first of all like to acknowledge that the inspiration for this has been gathered from the work of UU minister Reverend Elizabeth Stevens, who wrote her doctoral dissertation on trauma-informed worship. Well, those words, trauma-informed, are kind of buzzing around everywhere today. Trauma-informed teaching, trauma-informed leaders. You can use it as an adjective just about anywhere, because everywhere we turn, people are hurting, they're struggling. Well, I came to be an advocate for the concept in trauma-informed chaplaincy when I was at the hospital. And what that meant to me was that every time I went into a patient's room, I had to be aware that they had a childhood and a life history and a body with a certain type of regulatory system that was influencing them just as much, if not more, than the fact that they were here in a hospital fighting cancer. So the first time it really hit me hard. I'd gone into the room of a man who glared and lashed out at me the minute I walked in to say hello. "If you don't mind," he said, "I'd like just 15 minutes to eat lunch instead of having a conversation. Do you think you could do that for me?" Well, he just seemed so angry at my very appearance that I was taken aback, and I could feel that negativity hit me right in the chest. But I just said, "Of course, enjoy your meal, and I'll swing back later." But to myself, I'm thinking, maybe might find out a way to get busy so I don't have to go back. I really had no clue what was going on to make him respond that way, and I'm not a psychologist or a trained therapist or even a nurse. But even if it's your job to be helping people, our visceral instinct is to step back in such cases. Well, for us as members of a congregation, as workers in our jobs, as neighbors and friends, we never know when trauma or unsettledness might show up or be just lurking under the surface of people's lives. So it does help to kind of expect it to be there. So when a conflict develops, when we're in a committee meeting, or maybe we're in traffic, when someone flies off the handle and gets offended at work, or as we stand in line at the taco place, we can respond with care rather than buying into that shock of feeling that tells us that we're in the presence of something, if not dangerous, then at least potentially uncomfortable or volatile. So Reverend Stevens reminds us that trauma of any sort breaks us open or apart and shatters our understanding of ourselves and our understanding of how the world is working. If it's personal, it might be a really defined event. It might be a car accident, a fire, a financial crisis, or even a death. But it might also be the result of having grown up in uncertainty, dysfunction, poverty, or some type of abuse. Those sorts of things don't get talked about openly, but that actually might make up the bulk of our emotional being. Trauma can also be collective. It can be viscerous, vicarious, or associated pain. Something has happened in the world to create this feeling in us, like Uvalde with the school shootings, or like the firebomb attack that just occurred recently at the UU Fellowship in Plano, where damage was fortunately minimal, but it also triggered a lot of fear for many in our denomination. The trauma can even be historical, especially for people who have experienced racial or cultural struggle, like Patrick Reyes in the reading. He had survived to childhood, through his childhood to adulthood. And though he's doing okay now, all that he and his family and his ancestors went through, those racial slurs and the stereotyping, the job opportunities that he had lost, alcoholic relatives, all of it, that's still with him. So even though he is friendly and highly educated on the board of Meadville Lombard, when his professor said to him, "Give me your real answer as to what qualifies you to be here," that just lit a match. And it was like it was held in his skin because he survived his childhood. So Stevens goes on to point out that trauma is something that lives in our bodies, it lives in our nervous systems. It's not cognitive, and it needs to be physically processed. And when it's not, that's when we see people acting out of anxiety and hurt and uncertainty. That's when we see them pulling back or creating some sort of a wall. That's when we see folks who seem to get overwhelmed by small things or be resistant to change, because getting out of a comfort zone often raises some of those old feelings of ungroundedness and insecurity. So that snarky email that coworker sent, that wasn't really about you. And the person that you said hello to in the grocery store the other day that seemed so distant, that wasn't about you either. You can also find people sometimes complaining about really petty things. Their real pain is buried, or maybe not even clear to themselves. So it just sort of leaks out around the edges in seemingly unrelated ways. So here we are as a congregation, open to so many different experiences and so many different ways of being, and really in a posture of helping each other and helping the world around. But it is helpful to have that conscious awareness that everywhere we turn there are big and little traumas, landscapes just everywhere. Well, dealing with people in a church situation might actually exacerbate pain sometimes, depending on what is said and done. My seminary is full of people who have been wounded not only by their family of origin, but also by their faith communities. Sometimes we know that because a lot of us have come here out of the wounds from our original faith communities. And so as UUs, we tend to be really cognizant of that. And coming to church and being together is one way that we can help ease each other's anxiety. Fortunately, we're not a punitive family. We're not a denomination with a lot of expectations and a list of rules. We are so suited to being trauma-informed. We're a kind family that just wants everyone to feel supported and peaceful. Like when they spill purple on their shirt, we're there for them. In therapy speak, this might be called co-regulation. We can calm each other down. As we often say, it's good. It's good to be together. And so we use our words and our rituals and our songs to connect us to the part of ourselves where safety and self-confidence and love reside. Sometimes, as I mentioned, there's an obvious need from the events of the world A friend of mine, a UU minister, was in charge of a congregation in Colorado last year when there was a shooting at a gay nightclub. So she pulled together a vigil with some candles and some songs, with reflection and tears. Folks needed to come together and grieve and process and know that this terrible thing had happened, that there was still love and compassion in the world, and that while sadness or fear or anger were rampant at the moment, things would not stay that way. It felt broken, but community was the key to pulling through. But usually it's not something so overt. More likely it's just the small, daily things in the personal history infringing on the present, each of us with our own particular sadness, burden, or story. And so when we come here and we find ourselves in this familiar territory with an order of service, a chalice lighting, the saying of the covenant, an expectation of being welcomed, all those things are of such great use to us as bodies which need comfort and release. Because really, aren't we all just a bunch of overgrown kids who need to have our bath and our teeth brushed and our story read and have it happen in that order, and a kiss from an adult at the end who loves us and knows that everything is okay with the world? Yeah, that feels so good. So here, right here is a place where we can say to each other, just with our kindness and our body language, you're seen and you're held. In his book, How Your 21st Century Church Family Works, Peter Steinke addresses the fact that stress and anxiety, trauma and emotionality are extremely prevalent in church systems, in congregations, because we do operate just like a family. And there's a great deal of interrelatedness between the staff and the minister and the congregants and the different parts of the machine that we are. But often we expect more from each other in this setting. We think our ability to keep the peace when we have conflict or arguments, misunderstandings or issues arise, we think we should be doing that better than usual, better than ordinary. So in times of change or loss, or in times of growth, in times when a congregation is defining its way forward in new ways, as we're now facing with the imposition of the reworking of the language and the principles with this new Article 2, trauma responses might pop up more than usual. And when that happens, we need to not just have grace with each other, we need to have care for ourselves. And so we really need to be able to recognize our own responses as much as we are offering the kindness we do to others. Trauma-informed congregations are not only aware of others, each individual has a self-awareness. We notice places where our opinions are different. We notice when we have difficulty interfacing with someone in particular. Our bodies might start to tighten. We might stay away from services for a while, or feel like we are suppressing our voice when we want to talk about something. And these things seem like negative responses, but what we're actually doing is honoring what we feel. And by noticing it, we consciously give ourselves better opportunities to respond well instead of reacting out of our emotion. So self-differentiation is an important skill to cultivate. It's when we say, I'm a separate person, and I recognize that I have my own needs and my own physical responses to what's happening. And so I'm going to own that without blaming someone else, but also without running away. In addition to being attuned to reactivity in others, we'll be attuned to recognize when we ourselves are feeling off-center, because our innate trauma responses might trigger us at times to either fight or to stay away. So the sign of an emotionally mature person and of an emotionally mature congregation is the ability to tolerate a degree of turmoil and to stay in active relationship, knowing that we have our shared mission and vision, and knowing that things will not, and actually should not, stay the same all the time. We don't have to have training as a psychologist or a social worker in order to be at this level. We just have to have some discernment that whether we're dealing on a personal level or a congregational level, that a thing is happening, and that believe that a certain level of stress of temporary instability, that can be okay. So ultimately, we have a knowingness of our love for each other and for Unitarian Universalism as a way of approaching life. It's worth the effort. So this is the positive edge of trauma and conflict and the anxiety of change. This is post-traumatic growth in both a personal and collective way. So whatever we're facing, every crisis or difficult encounter can be an opportunity for an even brighter manifestation of all that we're capable of being. We have to hold the light and go through to the other side of whatever it is. And so as Parker Palmer says, we can be a circle of trust for each other. We can be patient, just giving one another the space to deal or to connect as we're able. Because when difficulties arise, when trauma gets activated in our bodies, many of us have an urge to do something or to fix something or to say something. But walk quietly in the woods. Just sit at the base of the tree. Breathe with the earth and wait for the animals to come. So Elizabeth Stevens says that she eventually asked, "What do you need?" And so this is a question to ask of others, but it's also a question that we can ask ourselves. And so when I was a chaplain at the hospital, even though my body was telling me, don't go back to that certain patient's room, because I didn't like getting ambushed with that crankiness, with that anger and rejection, my heart and my head told me that here was a person that was in pain, and it wasn't about me. So I at least had to try. So I went back, and I knocked, and then I waited just quietly inside the door, and I said, "Hey, I just thought I would check and see if this is a better time." And I didn't say anything else. But inside of myself, there was a lot of work going on. I had asked myself, "What do you need?" And the answer that I gave was that I know that I needed to be brave enough to show up. That was what I needed. I was telling myself that it was okay if he needed me or if he kicked me back out again. I was going to self-regulate. I wasn't going to be upset or afraid. I was just going to be happy with myself that I had been open enough and vulnerable enough to risk whatever the outcome was. So I think that he felt that really I didn't have an agenda. I was just a sitter in the woods, waiting for him, waiting for him. And sure enough, he started to talk. Then he started to cry and to explain why he had taken such a tone with me when I first came in. The people who were supposed to have been there for him, his family, they hadn't shown up. I wasn't going to be able to fix that. Nothing at all really depended on me, really, but I just listened. And that was what he most needed, for me to let him know that he wasn't alone in his brokenness. So ultimately that visit which had such potential for separation, it was very meaningful to both of us. Lamentation and pain can switch so quickly to connection and joy when we're in an awareness of others and ourselves. When we are well positioned to embrace whatever lies ahead, we'll handle anxiety at the level of consciousness, and we'll recognize it, and we'll honor it when it shows up in others or in our bodies, and we will support each other and be gentle with ourselves when we feel triggered or tightly coiled. We won't hunker down into denial or try to make painful things go away, because we know that, especially collectively, we have the strength to tolerate challenges. It's not easy to be a spiritual and emotional anchor, to hold stress while believing in respite and resolution, but the rewards are great. So I'm hopeful and curious about the ways in which we can continue to let love be our guide, and I hope that you will be too. Well, this morning the prayer is a collective one and a physical one, and I'm going to invite you to do the gestures with me and to say the words. Just do as you feel comfortable. So I'm going to model it once, and then you can join in as you are comfortable doing. But I want you to think about praying this to each other, but praying it to yourself as well. So it goes, loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world and your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Holy breath and holy name. Can you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world and your muscles and bones. So let go, let go, let go. Try it with me. You can stand if you want. That might be easier. As you're able. So offering it to each other and to yourself. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Go, go, let go. Holy breath, holy name. Will you ease this pain? Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go.
Thank you, Kathy. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, and a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. At this time, feel free to come forward and light a candle for a special joy or sorrow. If you would like a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. Brought out. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations. But no matter its size, every congregation depends upon its members. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make that a grand vision. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace, justice, and joy. The offering will now be taken. And please join me in saying, this gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world. Thank you for your generosity. And now for announcements. Sunday, August 27th, is our annual water communion service. This is an all ages celebration of the milestones of our individual life journeys and how our stories mix and mingle in beloved community. Please plan on bringing some water with you to church from a source that has a spiritual significance to you. Our new minister, Reverend Katie McQuaige Lucas, will guide us in this annual ritual. Watch the weekly briefs for more detail. Our annual tribute to our beloved animal friends is next Sunday. Their ceremony is always fun and family-friendly. To make it the best ever, we need everyone to bring their pets to be blessed and admired. And if you can't bring your pet in person, bring a photograph of your pet with you to the ceremony. In addition, as part of the ceremony, we'd also like to show off pictures of our pets along with their human family members. We want to see all of them. Send your favorite pet, all of them. Don't miss your chance. Please send those photos along with the name of your pet to office@BAUUC.org. These photos must be received by the end of the day on Monday, August 14th, that's tomorrow, to be included in the service. Immediately after today's service, we invite you to join us outside the sanctuary for coffee and fellowship. Everyone is invited to mingle over beverages and snacks. Beverages, I should say. I just want beverages and snacks. And finally, if you're not on our email list, you can sign up on our website at BAUUC.org. We send out an email of weekly briefs every Tuesday that contains all of these and many other activities that are part of our happenings in the church. And now, if you will, join us for our closing song. That's number 18 in the hymnal, for those that like to read the music. What Wondrous Love, verses 1 through 3.
I'd like to invite Sonia to come up to give the benediction in Spanish, and then I'll repeat it in English.
La bendición lleve contigo el amor que te sostendrá, la visión que te guiará las relaciones con todos los seres y el mundo que te enraciar en la tierra. Ve en paz y con una suave agitación mueve este mundo hacia el lado de amor.
Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings, and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Blessed be.
What you lacked in numbers, you made up for in quality.
Oh, thank you.
I know the men know that all too well here at the barbershop quartet.
6 to 2.
The barbershop quartet sounds very nice.
No, we're one of the
Yeah, well, that's why John flips the weekends that we're singing, so that we could have enough men to do the animals common.
Maybe you'll be like a sextet or
There
something.
you go. We won't be doing, no recurrence of Music Man in this group. No live wells, no none of that stuff.
Using the thing that
Yes. Yeah, I'm using the fake message. That's my life. Where is Tom? Is he here?
He'll be here.
He'll be here. He'll be here. And you're a whole section.
It was alive and well when I left it, that's all I can say.
The only reason I came to the service was so I wouldn't be late for rehearsal. You know, you guys did your summer. How are you? Yeah, this is it. We're next week, and then Charlotte and me. Then Charlotte and me are Sula on the water service. Yeah, there you go. All right, we can get rid of these. So what's up going on in the harbor? I saw that she was sick.